Okay, well, thank everyone for being here today to be part of this this announcement. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge our new Deputy Premier, the Honourable Dave Hancock, Minister of Advanced Education, and the Honourable Heather Klimchuk, Minister of Culture, for attending here today. And of course, these wonderful women that are standing behind me that are going to be an important part of growing this province. As we know, women are a strength of any family. In Aboriginal communities, it's no different. We also know that Aboriginal women are among the most vulnerable. For example, Aboriginal women are victims of spousal homicide 8 times more often than non-Aboriginal women. The employment rate for Aboriginal women in Alberta is more than double that of other Albertans, and that's unacceptable. In Alberta, under the leadership of Premier Redford and our Building Alberta plan, we want to change that. When I became minister, Premier Redford told me she wanted to ensure Aboriginal women had more opportunity in the province. Today, after speaking with communities and talking with First Nations, Metis and Inuit women, we are making a major step forward in addressing this issue by establishing 2 councils on economic security for Aboriginal women. One council will be dedicated for First Nations and the other to Metis. Each council has Inuit members on it. The councils are being established to provide our government with advice and solutions on how to address Aboriginal women's issues. The individuals who comprise these councils come from different areas of the province, have diverse backgrounds, and are strong Aboriginal leaders. Their advice and input is critical for our government to put the right programs and services in place to support Aboriginal women in accomplishing their goals and aspirations. Aboriginal Relations will be working closely with Human Services on this initiative, along with a working group of senior government representatives from various ministries, including education, health, and advanced education. I think this initiative is critical for us to address the challenges Aboriginal women face in Alberta and provide them with the opportunities this province has to offer. Thank you to all the women involved in these councils for your dedication and commitment to this issue. I'd now like to ask our incoming Deputy Premier, Minister of Human Services, Dave Hancock, to say a few words.
Well, thank you very much, Robin. I think it's a very exciting day. First and foremost, as one of the first duties that I have as incoming Deputy Premier, it is a real privilege to have this announcement as that first opportunity. Our Premier, Alison Redford, is very supportive of this initiative, and she's on her way to South Africa with the Canadian delegation at the moment. And so it is with great pride that I'm here. Coming out of Human Services and the partnership that we've had with Aboriginal Relations and trying to determine how we can do better to ensure that every Albertan has opportunity, that every Albertan child has opportunity. And we can deal with some of the issues that we have in our community. One of those issues is poverty. Child poverty as a challenge that the Premier has taken up. And when we look at the statistics about child poverty, we see that one of the largest groups of people involved in child poverty are single-parent families headed by women. And a great number of those are headed by Aboriginal women. Economic opportunity is critical. Economic participation is absolutely important so that those women and their children can have access to the opportunities that other Albertans have. And so this is a great step forward. Under the leadership of Donna Kennedy-Glans and the women that have come together to form the council, understanding that their tomorrow, not just for themselves, not even for themselves, but for our children and their future, means that we have to focus on how to provide that opportunity, that economic opportunity for all of our families. It's an important initiative for our Premier, important initiative for our government, and a very important initiative for our province. And thank you to all of the women who have agreed to be involved in this to provide leadership so that we can make this happen. Thanks so very much.
Thank you, Dave. The women standing here are all members of the First Nations Women Economic Security Council and the Métis Women's Economic Security Council, and we're extremely pleased that they could join us today. I'd like to introduce Corrine Lightning Earl, who's one of the co-chairs for the First Nations Women's Economic Security Council. Corrine is a member of the Samson Cree Nation. She is a lawyer and an elected councillor for her nations. I'd invite Corrine to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Creator for bringing us all here today on this beautiful day. I would like to thank Premier Redford for bringing First Nations and Métis women issues to the forefront in Alberta. I would also like to thank the Minister of Aboriginal Relations, Robin Campbell, and to the people in his ministry who have established this council. This is a significant moment for First Nation women across Alberta. This council will open the door for First Nations women to bring our stories and our experiences forward to the government, agencies, and to community stakeholders. It gives us a conduit for our voice, to voice our concerns, our solutions, to overcoming social and economic barriers that we face as First Nations women. The First Nations Women Council is made up of 23 First Nation women with diverse backgrounds and experiences. But we share one thing in common: our desire to work in collaboration with others to bring about positive change for our families and for our communities. This council represents a great opportunity for us to do just that. We are here today to commit to telling our story and to make effective change through the First Nations Women Economic Security Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Corrine. I'd like to introduce Rochelle Venn, who is one of the co-chairs for the Métis Women's Economic Security Council. Rochelle is the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women, and she is working on a special initiative to address barriers such as poverty, violence, and isolation of Aboriginal women. I'd invite Rochelle to say a few words.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. First of all, I wanted to thank Premier Redford for making Aboriginal women's issues a priority in Alberta. I think that's really important. And thank you to Minister Robin Campbell and his team for creating a welcoming and open process to create the two councils. I know it must have been tough to, in the beginning, to figure out where to start with these councils, but we are out of the gates, and I'm hopeful that we can accomplish great things in the coming years. The strong women who make up the Métis Women's Economic Security Council are excited to get started on prioritizing the work collaboratively to improve the social and economic outlook for Métis women in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. The councils will be supported by the Ministry of Aboriginal Relations and Human Services. And again, I'd like to thank Deputy Premier Dave Hancock, and again, as well as MLA for Calgary Varsity, Donna Kennedy-Glans, for their support and work as we establish these councils. We'd now be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, everyone.
So do you know at this point what kinds of issues you're going to be dealing with, or is that still to be discussed, or where do you start?
Well, I think one of the key components of this council that when Don and I sat down and talked about this isn't a government program where we're saying to First Nation or Aboriginal women, buy into this. What we're asking is for the women on this council to set the priorities for government of what we have to do to move forward to provide opportunities for Aboriginal women in this province. So they will set the priorities, and once the priorities are set, we'll then sit down and talk about what training needs or what tools have to be put in place to provide the opportunities for women to continue to be successful.
And do you have a sort of a time frame when you'd like to start to see, if you could talk and talk and talk for forever, right? So is there some sort of time frame that you want to start seeing some action?
Yesterday? No, people that know me is I'm not one to spend a lot of time talking. As a matter of fact, as Don Bray said in one of his articles, he didn't know I could talk at all. But we want to get this up and running, and we think it's very important that the sooner that we can get the priorities established, and the sooner that we can get the training and tools on the ground moving forward, the sooner that we can provide safe and sustainable communities for Aboriginal women in this province. One of the things that I've been passionate about is that if we don't move quickly, we're about to lose another generation of children in this province, and that's unacceptable, and we can't afford that. So I'm hoping that we will be able to move very quickly in setting the priorities, and then move even quicker in providing the training and tools that are going to be necessary. But again, it's important to understand that the women behind me that are part of the councils are the ones that are going to set the priorities, and they will move at a pace that they're comfortable with. And I think that's very important when acknowledging, Aboriginal culture in this province. There's a process that they will follow. There's dialogue within communities. We honor that, and we will move as quickly as the women are comfortable in moving.
When you say tools, resources, what are you talking about?
Training. What do we have to do in education? Is there work within human services? Where do we lack initiatives within communities? Do we have the proper education forums in place? Do we have tools as far as shelters, daycare? For example, and I've had this discussion with the building trades, is that we try to bring women into our work camps. Well, it's fine to say that there's jobs there, but where are their children going to be? So if you're going to build a camp, you better build a daycare too, because women need to know that their children are going to be safe and that they're going to be looked after. And if they know that, then they can go about their business, and whether it's upgrading education or taking an apprenticeship or just going to a job site and doing that work. So those are some of the tools that we have to think outside the box and get our heads wrapped around, because again, we have a number of single Aboriginal women in this province with kids, and we have to make sure those kids are looked after. And if we can do that, then women have a better chance of moving forward.
How long did it take to bring these two councils together?
I'm really not sure how long that took us.
We met in September.
We met in September, so we did it fairly quickly, actually. Dawn and I had discussions over the summer, and of course, the Premier had made it very clear to me that she wanted Aboriginal women to be a focus within our ministry. We got our heads wrapped around that. We talked about different ways, and we thought these councils would be something that would make a lot of sense and would actually involve real people talking about real issues. So about 3 or 4 months to get the councils up and running, and I would hope by late spring that we would have the initiatives in place to move forward as far as what the priorities are.
And have you given them some sort of budget or anything?
Yeah, we have a budget for them, and we'll look after that.
Any more questions?
Any questions for the women at all?
Yeah, perhaps Green or Michelle, wanted to
Sure.
talk a little bit about what areas each of you respectively think need special focus as you come together for these discussions.
In our preliminary discussions, we've talked about everything from child and care to child care to job opportunities to training on the job to adequate housing to murdered and missing women to poverty to racism to discrimination to access to justice. So we've talked about a lot of the issues, and now our next step when we meet in the new year will be discussed. So what are our priorities? What are our priorities? And that's where we need to go, is take a step towards prioritizing those issues and taking a deeper look at them, doing and working together to set those priorities so we can set the priority for the province.
How often do you anticipate meeting?
I think currently we're going to meet twice a year, but if needed more, we'll discuss it as it go along. Like we've already met twice this is our third time being together this year.
How do you find working with Aboriginal women from all across the province?
Technology is amazing. So with the support of the province, we'll be doing a lot of our interaction via technology, so via the internet. And so there's conference callings. So.
And you said that you still have to decide what are the priorities, but according to you, what are the priorities for Aboriginal women?
And I discussed all of those issues, but we as a council haven't sat down and said, so what's our top 10 list?
I'm not sure if I can add anything more. I know in my personal experiences, isolation, discrimination, and poverty, as well as violence, are the biggest barriers for Aboriginal women. So those are the ones that we continue to work on. And like Corin was saying, we did have some early discussions on what are those issues, and so we've got quite a few, and they're diverse and complex. So I know.
How important is it to bring Aboriginal women
how important is it for you all to have that input?
Yeah, and I think you can ask every woman here. I know it's critically important. You know, Aboriginal women in leadership are, you know, the numbers aren't as good as we'd like to have them. So their voice is often not heard. So this is an excellent opportunity.